Fairy tales, stories filled with magic, wonder, and happily ever afters. But what if we told you that these tales once held dark secrets, hidden from the light of day? Today, we're diving deep into the top 10 dark origins of fairy tales that will make you rethink the bedtime stories you thought you knew. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more incredible videos. Number 10. Cinderella's Bloody Shoe. The story of Cinderella, known for its magical transformation and the iconic glass slipper, has far darker origins in the tales collected by the brothers Grimm. In their version, the desperate stepsisters, eager to fit into the tiny glass slipper and marry the prince, resort to mutilating their feet. One cuts off her toes, and the other her heel, to squeeze into the shoe. Their gruesome deception is revealed when the slipper fills with blood, a stark contrast to the charming and elegant image often associated with the fairy tale. In addition to this violent twist, the Grimm version of Cinderella includes birds that assist in punishing the stepsisters. During Cinderella's wedding, the birds peck out the eyes of the stepsisters, leaving them blind as retribution for their cruelty. These grim and violent details, absent from the sanitized versions popularized by modern retellings, reveal the darker, more cautionary undertones that characterized many original European fairy tales, aiming to impart moral lessons through fear and suffering. Number 9. Little Red Riding Hood. The tale of Little Red Riding Hood, commonly known today as a story about a young girl, a wolf, and a heroic rescue, originally had much darker undertones. In early versions, particularly those recounted by Charles Perrault, there is no happy ending where a brave huntsman saves the day. Instead, Little Red Riding Hood is deceived by the wolf, who eats both her and her grandmother. The story ends with the wolf triumphing, serving as a dire warning to children about the dangers of talking to strangers and wandering off the safe path. These darker versions highlight the perils and predators that lurk in the real world, using the wolf as a metaphor for more sinister threats. In some versions of the tale, the wolf doesn't just eat Red Riding Hood. He tricks her into acts of complicity, such as consuming her grandmother's flesh. These grim interpretations strip away the comfort of a fairy tale ending, emphasizing the harsh realities and the importance of vigilance, a far cry from the sanitized versions told to children today. Number 8. Sleeping Beauty's Grim Awakening. The familiar story of Sleeping Beauty, with its enchanted slumber and true love's kiss, has origins that are far more disturbing than the versions we know today. In one of the earliest iterations, from Giambattista Basile's 17th-century tale, Sun, Moon, and Talia, the princess, Talia, falls into a deep sleep not because of a curse but after a splinter of flax lodges under her fingernail. Rather than being awakened by a prince's gentle kiss, she is discovered by a king who, unable to rouse her, violates her in her sleep. Talia awakens not from love but from the pain of childbirth, having given birth to twins while still unconscious. This grim awakening highlights the darker aspects of power dynamics and the objectification of women, themes common in the unvarnished tales of the past. These early versions were moralistic, aiming to shock and impart lessons about virtue, power, and the often brutal realities of life. Over time, as fairy tales became sanitized for children's entertainment, these disturbing elements were softened or removed entirely, leaving behind only the charming, romantic narratives that are well known today. Number 7. The Pied Piper's Revenge. The story of the Pied Piper of Hamelin, as often told today, is a cautionary tale about keeping promises. However, its darker origins paint a far more sinister picture. According to the Grimm brothers' version, Hamelin is plagued by a rat infestation, and a mysterious piper offers to rid the town of the rodents in exchange for payment. After he successfully leads the rats into the river to drown, the townspeople refuse to pay him the agreed-upon sum. In revenge, the piper returns to Hamelin, this time playing a haunting melody that lures the town's children away. The children are led into a mountain, never to be seen again, leaving the town in mourning and desolation. The tale's origin is even more enigmatic and grim, as historical records from Hamelin suggest a real event where 130 children vanished in 1284. Theories about this disappearance range from mass abduction or emigration to a tragic accident. The Pied Piper's tale serves as a haunting reminder of the consequences of broken promises and the eerie possibilities of folklore intertwining with real historical events. Its legacy is a chilling narrative that echoes through time, a blend of mystery and moral warning. Number 6. Snow White's Tortuous Fate. The original story of Snow White, as recorded by the Brothers Grimm, is far darker and more gruesome than the beloved Disney adaptation. In the Grimm version, the evil queen is not only obsessed with being the fairest in the land but also goes to terrifying lengths to eliminate her stepdaughter. After her initial plans to have Snow White killed by a huntsman fail, the queen resorts to using magical means. First a poisoned comb, then a suffocating corset, and finally a poisoned apple. Each attempt grows more sinister, highlighting the queen's unrelenting malice and Snow White's repeated brushes with death. Snow White's tale concludes with a disturbing twist on justice. After the prince awakens her from her death-like slumber, the evil queen is invited to Snow White and the prince's wedding. There, as a form of punishment, she is forced to wear red-hot iron shoes and dance until she collapses and dies. This grim ending serves as a stark contrast to the happily ever after narrative we know today, reminding us of the brutal consequences often present in traditional fairy tales. Number 5. The Little Mermaid's Sorrow. The original tale of The Little Mermaid by Hans Christian Andersen is a far cry from the happy ending popularized by modern adaptations. In the classic story, the mermaid falls deeply in love with a human prince and sacrifices her voice to obtain human legs, enduring excruciating pain with every step. Despite her sacrifices, the prince marries another woman, leaving the mermaid heartbroken. Her only chance of survival is to kill the prince, but she refuses, choosing instead to accept her fate. In the end, the Little Mermaid's sorrow reaches its peak as she dissolves into sea foam, unable to return to her underwater home or attain the love she longed for. However, Andersen gives a bittersweet twist to her fate. Instead of ceasing to exist, she becomes a spirit of the air, given a chance to earn a soul through good deeds over centuries. This tragic and poignant conclusion reflects the complex, often dark nature of Andersen's original fairy tales, where sacrifice and sorrow coexist with hope and redemption. Number 4. Rapunzel's Imprisonment. The original tale of Rapunzel, as told by the Brothers Grimm, is much darker than the sanitized versions many know today. In this early version, Rapunzel is confined to a tower by a witch who had traded for her as a baby in exchange for the forbidden rampion her parents stole. Rapunzel's only contact with the outside world is through the witch and, eventually, a prince who discovers her by hearing her sing. When Rapunzel naively reveals her secret meetings with the prince to the witch responds with fury, cutting off Rapunzel's long hair and casting her out into the wilderness. The story takes a grim turn as the prince, attempting to rescue Rapunzel, is deceived by the witch. He climbs the tower using Rapunzel's severed hair, only to be confronted by the witch. In his despair, the prince leaps from the tower, falling into thorns that blind him. Wandering aimlessly for years, he eventually reunites with Rapunzel, whose tears of joy miraculously heal his blindness. While the story ends on a somewhat hopeful note, the themes of imprisonment, deceit, and suffering highlight the darker undertones often found in these early fairy tales. Number 3. The Frog Prince's True Nature. The tale of the Frog Prince is well known today as a charming story about a cursed prince who regains his human form through the love of a princess. However, the darker origins of this fairy tale, particularly in the Brothers Grimm version, paint a different picture. In this version, the frog is not transformed back into a prince by a sweet kiss, but rather by the princess hurling the frog against a wall in disgust after he insists on sharing her bed. This violent act, rather than an act of love, breaks the curse and reveals his true nature as a prince. The story underscores themes of force and obligation, rather than romance and affection. The princess is compelled to keep her promise to the frog under the threat of being disgraced, and her frustration and anger are what ultimately reveal the prince's true identity. This version of the Frog Prince shows that early fairy tales often had a harsher and more pragmatic approach to breaking curses, where violence and brute force could sometimes serve as the keys to transformation, reflecting the raw and unvarnished truths of human nature and interaction. Number 2. Bluebeard's Bloody Chamber. The tale of Bluebeard is one of the most gruesome fairy tales in European folklore, centering on the themes of curiosity, disobedience, and gruesome punishment. In the story, Bluebeard is a wealthy man with a mysterious past, known for his distinctive blue beard and a string of vanished wives. He gives his new bride the keys to all the rooms in his mansion but warns her never to enter one specific chamber. Unable to resist the temptation, the bride opens the forbidden door only to discover the horrifying secret hidden within. The room is filled with the bloodied remains of Bluebeard's previous wives, murdered for their curiosity and defiance. The grisly chamber serves as a dark symbol of the dangers of forbidden knowledge and the consequences of disobedience. Bluebeard's story, unlike many sanitized fairy tales, does not shy away from graphic violence and the macabre, illustrating a brutal lesson about the perils of crossing boundaries set by those in power. The tale reflects the darker side of human nature and the sinister undercurrents of control and brutality in relationships, making Bluebeard one of the most chilling fairy tales ever told. Number 1. Hansel and Gretel's Cannibalistic Witch. In the grim fairy tale of Hansel and Gretel, two siblings are abandoned in a dark forest by their desperate parents. They stumble upon a house made of candy and sweets, only to discover that it belongs to a wicked witch with a horrifying agenda. The witch lures them inside with the promise of food and safety, but her true intention is far more sinister. She captures Hansel and Gretel, planning to fatten Hansel up and eventually devour him, while Gretel is forced to do the housework. The story's depiction of the witch as a cannibalistic monster highlights the dark and primal fears that are central to many fairy tales. The tale reflects anxieties about the dangers lurking in the unknown and the cruelty that can exist behind seemingly benign facades. The gruesome elements of Hansel and Gretel, including the witch's cannibalistic tendencies, serve as a stark reminder of the potential for evil in the world and the extreme measures that the characters must take to survive. Fairy tales, far from just whimsical stories, often reflected the harsh realities of the times. They taught lessons through fear, pain, and darkness. If you enjoyed uncovering these dark origins, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and remember, not all fairy tales have a happy ending.